Hello and welcome to Wise Words, where I'm speaking to amazing women who are sharing their wisdom, their outlook on life, the lessons that they've learnt in order to be able to help other people like you. So thank you for tuning in. Today I am welcoming such an amazing, incredible soul. I met Francesca, about 6 or 7 years ago. And we've kind of been, when someone comes into your life and then goes out again and then comes back again and in again. And every time I meet her, I'm just so amazed with what she's doing and where she is. I've already introduced her. This lovely lady is called Francesca. I asked her what her title was, and what did you say?
Francesca.
Francesca, there we go. It's very simple. But Francesca, at the moment, you've done amazing things in your life. Every time I speak to you, there's a story. But what I want to just ask you about now is, what is it that you are focusing on right now, particularly in the next few weeks?
Going back to fix some things I started pre-COVID, and now I want to go back, see how they're up to, see what's happening, and that involves going to Africa.
Fabulous. And whereabouts in Africa are you going to be going?
We're going to Mandimba in Mozambique, which is sub-Saharan Africa. It's northern Mozambique, Niassa. And to get to it, there's no direct route, so it's a bit tortuous. So we get to see Kenya, get to see Ethiopia, and then we come over into Malawi.
Amazing.
On by road.
And you said that you've been there a few times before?
Yes, my first visit was back in 2003 when I came as the medical token person with the vicar and a couple of other worthies from a parish of St Mary's in Hampton, and they were looking to see what they could do if they partnered and trying to make the good folk of Hampton Parish a little bit more missionary in concept and outward looking.
Very good. And you went there, what role did you go as in that?
So I just went along in case any of them got sick and carry the paracetamol. I did actually get accused of bringing an operating theatre.
Is that not true, or is that true?
Well, you never know. You've got to be prepared.
So let me just clarify. I'm presuming you do have a medical background.
Yes, I'm a nurse.
Very good.
I'm a general nurse, adult nurse. I'm a mental health nurse. I'm registered mental on the Register of Nurses for England and Wales. You'll find out more about that later. Mm-hmm. And I practiced as a midwife, but I'm no longer a midwife because I couldn't. We have to re-register every 3 years, and you've got to have actually had supervised practice. And I couldn't achieve all three. It seemed like too much.
So might sound a silly question, but why Africa? Why Mozambique?
Well, that was where the wind blew me in. I hadn't chosen to go there. It seemed like a good idea. And I was at St Mary's University in Twickenham at the time, and I was trying to work up a stunning thesis to put in for my final year. And I thought, yeah, this will give me the material I want. It was theology and world religion, so it sort of fitted with the different culture. And so I did, but then it took hold in lots of other ways, so it was much more than that.
So you get there, you get to Africa, you're going out there, as you said, a bit of a mission, if you like, to do some good things. And then when you got there, what was it that kind of, as you said, grabbed hold of you?
That people could be so happy in abject poverty and misery with nothing. They were just so grateful to see us. They were so excited. They thought it was wonderful. They laid out spreads for us everywhere we went, and we found it was all the food they had, not just in their house, in the village. And the men took the leading role in entertaining the guests, but I was kind of let loose. I wandered away from them and went off with the women, which caused a bit of a stir, and found out how they really lived and what it was like in their little houses and the little congregations in which they were living, how hard it was just to get water, and just to put a meal on the table. And I mean a meal. They didn't always put a meal on the table, but the meal they put on every evening was pretty poor. And breakfast, not so much. Didn't see any breakfasts. Just one meal cooked in the evening.
And I know when you, I heard you talk recently, and you were sharing a story about a young girl called Isnat.
Isn't
yeah. And she kind of really grabbed hold of a wave of help,
well,
didn't she?
there were a lot of people like Isn't, but her story was just one that, you know, when something happens, you just turn on and you go, oh, fuck. And you can't, your brain goes numb and you can't think, what should have happened there? What could I do? I was powerless. Nobody was able to do anything. It just unfolded in front of us. And so her story, I kind of thought, it had to count for something. There had to be something that would become of that. I was witnessing that for a reason.
And so she was giving birth at the time that you
She
were
was
with
giving
her,
birth, and I just tipped up at the health centre like I was doing every morning, see what was going down, see where I could help, and there she was lying there, and she couldn't push, she couldn't do anything, she couldn't help the delivery. Baby was stuck, baby was born, lived for a short time, then expired, and her mother came in, and it was, and she'd lost 5 babies. She'd lost 5, 3 born, just like this one, and 2. She'd had twins that had not lasted very long either, but they made a few months. I think they made it into their first year.
I remember thinking that hearing about the 5 children that she'd lost, it would be quite shocking, I'm sure you'd agree, in itself, but then she was actually how old?
15.
Yeah, wow. And I know, we've had many conversations, haven't we, where people, I've said, what are the things that people ask you for? And you say, well, they'll ask, what's wrong with contraception? Why can't we solve that? And I know in your story you do tell a very funny part, which we'll not share now. If you want to see that, you must watch the video.
Yeah.
But with regards to the contraception, what's the problem like? Why do people have a lot of children in Africa? And why is contraception not?
Well, mostly the women are on a replacement program. They have a child, they lose it, and they want another. Quite often the partner doesn't survive more than 2 attempts. The lost children, he goes on to somebody else, and then she finally gets another partner, and she has to have a child with them. That's the way it works.
And the contraception, what happens with the contraception?
Well, contraception, the men do not like it. It's against their culture, it's against everything. They get very, very irate and indignant and come stamping their feet and threatening to beat up aid workers who dished out contraceptive. Condoms. There were some that tried to implant the contraceptive in their arms and things, and that didn't go down well. And pills don't work because they just can't get a regular supply, and it relies on a regular supply. So they can't secretly take the pill. But the condom is more important because that protects from other forms of venereal disease. So with HIV rife there, it protects them a bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more. And I know you share in the presentation that you were doing about how it's really about educating and both learning about what to do.
Oh yes, I mean they taught me probably more than I taught them, in the way that a culture evolves and the way that they internalise their beliefs and the way it becomes part of what they think and do, and how it keeps them going. Their spirituality is, you can't question it, it's certainly there. And that's why they adapt so easily to things like Christianity and anything where there's a bit of prancing around and dressing up, sorry God. But they take to that straight away because, oh yes, we can see how this works. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you're heading out there again as we are speaking now in August 2023, just in a few weeks. And what is it that you want to do? You want to just review how things lie since you were there last?
Well, I think it's, in a way, back to first time again. I'm seeing what have they made of the last few years? How has COVID affected them? I know how it has affected them in that there's been no tourism, there's been no visitors, just as I couldn't go, neither could anybody else. But I don't know how they've survived themselves and what they have worked up from the things that we were practicing and teaching them when we were there, what they've done with the ultrasound program, where is that up to, and what do they need now to take any of these programs forward? How can we contribute to making that a reality and embedding it again?
So. And you keep saying we, so who's we? Who's going to Africa with you?
Well, there's a lovely lady who stood up and volunteered, and I love a volunteer. I didn't even have to put a shilling in her cup. So Jane has decided that she would like to sample Africa. I know she'll love it. It gets hold of you. It's
So this
so
is
different.
Jane Leonard, who has played rugby for England. She was the captain of the Combined Services rugby team. That was in the army for about 10 years, and then when I remember listening to a conversation that you were talking about, what should we say, toilets and toilet habits. Jane looked horrified. I remember you just said, "You've been in the army, haven't you?" Which is quite funny. But you're going to go out there, and Jane's going to be playing sport with the
yes,
children.
we've already been in touch with some of the education team out there that we were working with before, and they're very excited. They have more schools now, so they're very excited to go, and everyone's keen to get ladies rugby going, or girls rugby. So Jane's working that up and seeing how she can. They've got 5 schools on the list at the moment. There'll probably be more. So she's going to go and tip up there and show them how it's done. And they will show her what they know. But I think rugby, their football's pretty vicious. Rugby has more contact. We'll see.
Yeah, I think she was talking about putting tags on the kids,
tags,
so they don't have to actually go in and break bones and things like that. We're going to do it in a very health and safety way, shall we say, for those.
Nodding wisely and thinking maybe a larger first aid kit than last time would be.
Now, all of this is not being funded by anybody else. This is you and Jane giving up your time going out there, and so you are asking in a Bob Geldof style for
give
something.
us your fucking money.
Just because obviously this is something that's close to your heart. You're sharing this with Jane. Jane's going to be sharing it on social media to bring awareness, really, because I know a lot of people would say, well, why don't you help people closer to home? Why Africa? What would you say to that?
Why Africa? Why anywhere? It's a one world. It's not. We're not all divided little silos. COVID did a great job of putting us back into little silos. Let's break free again. What we are doing here, climate change in the Western world, is affecting them more than us at the moment. This is the second hot summer. Wow. They've had floods, cyclones, drought. All of their seasonal variations in weather is totally on its head. Not just through Africa, through India. The oceans are getting warmer. We need to help them to breed a generation that's going to fix this, because we've certainly messed it up. It's all of our problem. It's not just a few people living in a village there, but it has to start somewhere.
And it's interesting because if you look on YouTube, you'll see and Instagram, lots of lovely videos of the children, dancing and having a great time. And we kind of talked about this, didn't we?
Yeah, well, they do.
Yeah,
they do. They'll get up and dance for anything. You just hold your mobile phone up with a tune on it, and they're away.
It's good to see, isn't it?
It is good to see, but they take adversity in their stride because that's all they've known.
So what we say is, if you really like, we're watching these videos of the kids, dancing, does it put a smile on your face? Of course it does, because you want children to be happy, regardless of whether or not you know that child. And so that's why, for £5, for example, what can you do with £5 in Africa?
£5, 125 doses of pain relief. That's a start. Even something like that is hard to get there.
£60 a year?
£60 a year will send a child to school with a uniform and some books, so he looks the same as his peers. Even if he's clever enough to get into the school, he won't be able to go, and he won't go without the uniform. They have to conform, they have to look the same. And that's very important to them, to give them a little bit of status.
And later down in the line, you're talking about maybe sponsoring children and people being in touch with.
We were doing that a few years ago, where particularly some of the brighter children were sponsored, and then someone made a pledge to continue sponsoring them so that they went on to higher education. and had more opportunities to bring that learning back to the village and bring that learning back to the school. Some of them actually became the teachers who are now in the new primary schools.
Yeah. Really good. So, Francesca, what do people need to do if they want to contribute and donate and help you and Jane on this journey of discovery?
Well, on this trip, we're looking at GoFundMe. So we've got a GoFundMe page. There is a link to it, which is...
We'll pop it down.
Pop down
after
there.
the video.
Yes.
Down there, that sounds
Down
right.
there.
But we'll pop it underneath this video, yes.
Yes. And they go there. And yeah, take it from there. Yeah. Link up with us. We are two women that are here to change things, and change is what has to happen.
Yeah,
We're motivated, we want to do it, and we want to help other women to help their children to grow into the world that we'd like to see.
Yeah. Francesca is 70 years old, plus, won't say
You
it.
can go off, people.
Yeah. And, you know, it would be easy for you to just stay at home, you know, with your dog and watch the telly and continue to do the work that you do and not do this. And so I think it's only fair that, you know, if you want to make a difference, even, you know, just with £5, you know, what does £5 buy you this day? Probably a coffee and maybe a cake if you're lucky. If you'd be willing to contribute that towards, you know, somebody that you don't know yet, but that will definitely make a difference in their life, then I'm sure you join me in wishing Francesca and Jane all the best on their trip. And Francesca, thank you so much for just being incredible, amazing, giving, sometimes to your own detriment. I know this, but thank you for being you. You are amazing, and I'll give you some of my fecking money.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to keep standing up and speaking out, and just sharing your wisdom like Francesca has here. We'll see you soon on the next episode.